Picture this. The United States and Iran are trading shots once again in the narrow waters of the Strait of Hormuz. This latest clash threatens to shatter a fragile ceasefire. The U.S. military reports it blew up 6 Iranian small boats there. This followed Iranian attacks using cruise missiles, drones, and fast boats on U.S. Navy ships and commercial vessels. The incident occurred just hours after President Trump declared the U.S. would help guide stranded ships safely out of the strait under the new Project Freedom initiative. At the same time, the UAE is accusing Iran of fresh missile and drone strikes. One hit an important Emirati oil port, sparking a massive fire and injuring 3 people. You are watching tensions spiral in a region already on edge. President Trump, in a Fox interview, warned that any Iranian targeting of U.S. ships would lead to them being blown off the face of the earth. Yet he also suggested the Iranians might be more open to negotiations now. This mixed message comes as the situation has rapidly deteriorated from promising talks just days ago. Trump posted on social media noting Iran fired on unrelated nations during ship movements. He mentioned a South Korean cargo ship and even suggested South Korea might join the mission. Tomorrow, the Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and Joint Chiefs Chairman Dan Kane will hold a press briefing. Officials say the U.S. will continue defensive actions to protect assets. CNN's Kristen Holmes reports from the White House that senior administration officials felt positive about negotiations at the end of last week. Now everything seems to be devolving quickly. Central Command Chief Admiral Bradley Cooper detailed the massive U.S. military presence. It includes guided missile destroyers, over 100 aircraft Reaper drones, and 15,000 service members in the area. When Iran launched its assault, the U.S. responded decisively. Apache and Seahawk helicopters took out the 6 Iranian small boats threatening the ships in the strait. Importantly, Admiral Cooper emphasized this is not about escorting each commercial vessel individually. Instead, they have created a broad defensive umbrella designed to provide deterrence and protection. The goal of Project Freedom is humanitarian. It aims to free commercial ships trapped for 2 months inside the Gulf so they can deliver goods to world markets again. At least one U.S. guided missile destroyer has already passed through the strait to assist. Some vessels have begun moving, but overall shipping traffic remains significantly reduced. Iranian media from the IRGC claims their forces confronted and prevented a U.S. naval vessel from entering. They say shots were fired, but CENTCOM has denied those specific allegations. This comes against the backdrop of a fragile ceasefire in place for nearly a month. The broader conflict had disrupted shipping and raised fears over global energy supplies. The Strait of Hormuz is vital, carrying around 20% of the world's seaborne oil trade. Any prolonged closure here sends shockwaves through the entire global economy. Attacks were not limited to the strait. Iran also struck targets in Oman, injuring civilians in a small coastal area near the entrance to the waterway. Natasha Bertrand reports that the U.S. is acting defensively to safeguard ships and its own forces. But questions remain whether this exchange means the ceasefire is effectively over. Iranian officials had expressed deep concerns about U.S. naval moves in the strait. They feared America would use the ship guidance effort to seize control of the critical passage. Kevin Liptak at the White House notes mixed signals from the administration on talks. Trump had called discussions positive, but previously rejected the latest Iranian proposal as unacceptable. The president appeared frustrated with the deadlock where fighting had paused, but the strait stayed closed and negotiations stalled. Project Freedom was his bold move to break that impasse. However, the risk is clear. If Iran continues attacking vessels, the ceasefire could collapse entirely, and the United States might find itself back in open conflict with Iran. So what exactly is happening in this high-stakes confrontation, and how did we reach this dangerous moment? The full picture reveals deep complexities in U.S.-Iran relations and regional power plays. But peel back the layers, and you discover a high-stakes chess match where Trump's bold Project Freedom is testing Iran's red lines in the world's most critical choke point. This rapid shift from optimistic talks at the end of last week to direct kinetic exchanges today reveals deep mutual distrust that public statements alone cannot bridge easily. You seem simultaneously threatening to blow Iran off the face of the earth while hinting at possible deals. This contradictory rhetoric keeps Tehran off balance and maximizes leverage. Project Freedom, marketed as humanitarian ship guidance, actually represents a massive U.S. military buildup that Iran perceives as an attempt to seize control of the vital Strait of Hormuz. Iranian officials had warned precisely against this scenario, fearing the easing of blockades would allow the U.S. Navy to dominate the waterway under the cover of protecting commerce. The destruction of 6 Iranian boats by American helicopters exposes the hypocrisy of claiming purely defensive actions while projecting overwhelming force across the entire region. Meanwhile, attacks on UAE oil ports and Omani coastal areas show how this U.S.-Iran confrontation is dragging innocent Gulf states into a wider, dangerous vortex of violence. Admiral Cooper's description of a layered defensive umbrella with destroyers, aircraft, and drones masks the reality of an assertive power projection that challenges Iran's sphere of influence. Is the ceasefire still meaningful when cruise missiles fly, drones swarm, and boats are sunk in the very waters it was supposed to calm? The answer appears no. Trump's social media call for South Korea to join the mission reveals an effort to internationalize the burden and legitimize what Iran sees as foreign interference in its backyard. Hidden agendas bubble beneath the surface as economic pressure from stranded ships forces decisive action that risks derailing the very negotiations both sides claim to want. You have to wonder if the White House mixed signals rejecting Iranian proposals one day and praising talks the next are deliberate tactics to force better terms. CENTCOM denies Iranian claims of shots fired at U.S. vessels, yet the swift retaliation against their boats sends an unmistakable message of zero tolerance for challenges. This flare-up underscores the fragility of any truce built on shaky foundations without addressing core issues of trust, sovereignty, and control over global energy choke points. By emphasizing no individual escorts but a broad presence, the U.S. cleverly avoids the appearance of direct confrontation while maintaining operational dominance in the strait. Yet Iran's continued attempts to target vessels prove that deterrence through sheer numbers has not fully succeeded and may instead provoke further escalation. The involvement of 15,000 service members highlights the enormous resources poured into this operation, with huge potential costs if the situation spirals out of control. Observers note past spikes have de-escalated quickly, but hitting UAE and Oman targets raises the stakes dramatically for all regional players involved. What you are witnessing is classic great power competition, where humanitarian rhetoric conveniently aligns with strategic goals of securing oil routes and projecting strength. The announced Pentagon briefing tomorrow will likely showcase American resolve, while downplaying any suggestion that the fragile ceasefire is already in tatters. Traffic in the strait remains depressed despite these efforts exposing the limits of military deterrence when fear and suspicion dominate commercial decision-making. At its core, this incident lays bare the persistent cycle of mistrust, where each side's defensive moves are interpreted as existential threats by the other. Forward thinking suggests such contentious confrontations could either force a breakthrough in talks or plunge the Middle East back into full-scale conflict with global repercussions. As contradictory narratives collide between Washington and Tehran, the path ahead grows increasingly uncertain, leaving the world to hold its breath over what happens next. This unfolding drama forces you to confront uncomfortable truths about power projection and the thin line separating deterrence from outright provocation in our volatile world today. Economically, the fallout risks spiking global oil prices, inflating consumer costs, and disrupting critical supply chains that affect economies and households everywhere around the world. Geopolitically, this confrontation tests fragile alliances throughout the Gulf and draws major players like China into the equation, given their heavy dependence on these energy routes. Socially, the human toll continues to mount, with injuries in the UAE and Oman highlighting how great power games exact a painful price from innocent civilians. Technologically, the prominent role of modern drones and attack helicopters demonstrates how asymmetric warfare tactics can effectively challenge superior conventional naval forces in confined spaces. For President Trump and his administration, the outcome of Project Freedom will define their approach to Iran and influence broader U.S. strategy across the Middle East. Iran now faces a perilous strategic dilemma where pressing its attacks risks devastating retaliation, while any sign of retreat might erode its regional credibility and internal unity. Cascading effects could potentially include renewed international sanctions, tighter security partnerships among Gulf states, and a strategic realignment that pulls in Russia and other external powers. One possible scenario involves both sides stepping back from the brink, allowing cooler heads to prevail, and restarting delicate negotiations under new conditions of mutual respect. The darker alternative features miscalculations that spiral into full-scale conflict, devastating infrastructure, and plunging the region and global economy into prolonged uncertainty and turmoil. Yet opportunities exist for breakthrough diplomacy if leaders seize this moment to address core grievances and forge agreements that secure the strait for all parties involved. The strategic ramifications stretch profoundly wide, affecting energy security, international trade, and the delicate balance of power that will define the coming decades in global relations. As key stakeholders from shipping giants to ordinary citizens hold their breath, the outcome here may reshape how the world manages vital maritime choke points going forward. In synthesizing the full picture, it becomes evident that ceasefires without genuine trust and underlying political resolutions remain incredibly fragile and prone to sudden breakdowns at any provocation. Ultimately, true sustainable peace demands more than military posturing. It requires bold diplomatic engagement that tackles the root causes driving this dangerous cycle of confrontation. What do you think the future holds in this critical region? Share your insights and predictions in the comments section right now below this video. Do you believe this incident will push both sides back to the negotiating table, or are we witnessing the start of a more dangerous phase? The world urgently needs more citizens like you who stay informed, dig deeper, and hold leaders accountable for decisions that impact all of us globally. My well-reasoned prediction points towards short-term volatility followed by renewed attempts at dialogue as the enormous costs of escalation become painfully obvious to all. Whatever the immediate path forward, the Strait of Hormuz will continue serving as the ultimate test of whether diplomacy or force prevails in 21st century geopolitics. This comprehensive investigation reveals not merely today's breaking news, but the deeper structural tensions that are reshaping our interconnected planet in profound and lasting ways. Thank you for watching and engaging deeply with this analysis of one of the most consequential stories unfolding on the world stage right now. If this report helped you understand the complexities better, please like the video, share it widely, and subscribe for more fearless geopolitical breakdowns like this one. Until our next investigation, stay curious, stay engaged, and remember that the truth often lies beyond the headlines in the stories we choose to explore together.